I mean, who are you?
Plenty of time for that. You shall rest. Get some sleep. That's if you'll take the job.
Yes.
Well then, welcome to Lockwood & Co.
Hello and welcome to Haunting the Narrative. Today, Meg and Lizzie are here for another Kit Bag episode where we are going to answer some listener questions, discuss future careers for the members of Lockwood & Co., and basically engage in wild speculation, which is what we do best.
It really is. So thank you so much to everyone who sent us in questions, especially the people of Tumblr. I mean, mostly the people of Tumblr. It was only the people of Tumblr, really. So as Lizzie mentioned, we are going to engage in a lot of speculation today because most of these questions are pretty speculative. So these are really just our thoughts and opinions. This is not like we're talking very little about what's actually in canon today, but that's what makes it fun.
Yep, and we've kind of crowdsourced this with Mairead and Kiki, so we might mention some of their opinions as well, because there are certainly some questions here where they had some strong opinions, but Meg and I decided to record without them. So there. All right, so let's start with these post-canon careers. What do we think the members of Lockwood & Co. did after the empty grave? We get this question, I've seen it asked in various places, not necessarily specifically for us to answer on the pod, but because I've seen the question around, I thought we'd take a swing at it.
Yes, I love talking about this. We should start off, I guess, with Lucy.
Yeah, who is in some ways the most difficult, but let's start with her anyway.
Exactly. I mean, one of the obvious answers for Lucy is that she becomes a writer, which we know she at least writes these books. So that's fairly self-explanatory. But I also harbor a theory that, because we know that she likes to draw, that she eventually also writes a spin-off series for children that's like based on just like her and Skull. So it's called Carlisle and Skull or something like that. And it's just got like lots of cute illustrations of Skull, and then Skull somehow becomes this like beloved children's character, and there are stuffed animals of him, and like they all joke about how he would hate it so much if he was around to see it. But this is,
I hope she comes up with some really creative swear words for him, because like I love on Bluey they use like dog-centric swears, and my kids have started saying biscuits when they're upset about something, because doggy biscuits. I would love if Skull ends up with some like ghosty swears to replace his actual foul mouth, because it's a kid's book.
Yes, yeah, she definitely tames him down a lot, and makes him more appropriate for children. But I don't know where I came up with this idea, but I have just loved it ever since I came up with it. So
I absolutely love it, and I actually took a stab at doing a children's book, Skull, what do you call it, like fan art at one point that was based on a very popular kids book right now. It's Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus, and it was Don't Let the Skull Touch the Cat.
Oh. Oh yes, I've seen it. I've seen it. It's on Tumblr. Yes. It's so cute.
Yeah, I kind of animated it. It's not very good because it was my first stab at like trying to do some art on my tablet, but it was still, I think the idea is really good, and maybe someone with more artistic ability than myself, or at least more tech savvy artistic ability, could take a stab at it at some point. Anyway, so that's writing. It also seems really likely that for at least a while she would probably work with or for UPRA. This is the United Psychic Response Agency. This is what happens kind of at the very end of The Empty Grave. She mentions that DPRAC takes over like Rotwell and Fitz, and sort of like the consortium of agencies that Fitz, that Marissa / Penelope had been building. They take it over and just like are going to run the whole thing.
Yes.
So Lucy has expressed interest at the end of the book in helping them take down the fences on the other side. And maybe searching for Skull over there. Who knows? I don't think that's ever said in canon, but it's definitely implied. It's definitely there if you want to see it.
I want to see it. I think it's very likely.
So I think she'd do that for at least a while. As you mentioned, she has artistic ability. She could, decide to go back to school, maybe go to art college, do something like that, develop that further. I don't know if it's something she would want to build a career out of, or if it's just something she does to relax. I actually had to make that decision at one point. I decided to go into math and tech and not turn art into a career, because it's relaxing for me and I don't want to lose that.
Yeah, that's valid. Another common thing I think idea that comes up pretty commonly for Lucy is the idea of her becoming a therapist, which obviously in her current state, that's maybe not the best career, but I think once she's gone through a lot of therapy herself, I think she would be a really great therapist. And there's also art therapy, which I think kind of blends two of her talents, and I think could be something that she would find very interesting and very fulfilling.
Yeah, I've seen people argue about this, because I've seen some people say she'd be a great therapist, and other people say, are you kidding? She has no self-awareness. But because she has no self-awareness, and because, she kind of needs some therapy, people I know who've gone into therapy are people who've gone through the process. It's a little bit like the best teachers are people who struggled to learn, because they're the ones who can kind of help you to see, where you need to work. So I also think she'd be a very good therapist in like 10 or 20 years' time.
Yeah, she needs some time to, develop further. And the other thing I think that would make Lucy a great therapist is she does have such a strong sense of empathy. And if she can turn that towards people instead of just ghosts and their stories and like learning about their struggles, I think it's a really natural fit for her in some ways.
Yeah, I think one way or another, she would want to help people. That seems like Lucy's natural proclivity. And, I think she maybe would try a lot of things before she figured out what the best way for her to continue to help people after no longer being an agent would be.
Exactly. Agreed. On all points. One thing I don't agree with, so Nat sent us her ideas, and she mentioned that Lucy could possibly become a member of parliament. And I just have to say, I cannot imagine anyone who would hate being a politician more than Lucy Carlisle. So I'm not there, but maybe some of you see that. So who knows?
It is a good way to help people.
Maybe.
I mean, in a million years, I would never, and I don't think Lucy would have the patience or just the interest, but sure.
No, but I think that is a natural transition to the next character we want to talk about, which is Lockwood. And Lockwood, more than anyone else in this series, I think has a strong proclivity towards politics and potentially becoming a politician.
Definitely.
I mean, there isn't even that line in the show about where he's like, they say he's like a politician, right? You lie like a politician. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's Fairfax that says that.
I very much see that in him, particularly later in life, once he goes through some other things first.
One career for him I've seen thrown around a lot is consultant, which I don't know what that means, but I do think he'd be great at it.
Okay, so for the record, I am a consultant. That is my literal job. I would say, speaking from my personal experience, I think Lockwood would just be an excellent consultant, because so much of being a consultant is, for better or worse, being able to go around telling people that you're an expert in something and you want to tell them what to do, and they're paying you for your expertise and their guidance, and
or at least for your opinion.
Yes, and a lot of being a consultant generally, at least in like this fields in which I work, is about like being really strategic and helping people come up with strategic plans. And our boy, that is like exactly what he is out there to do. So
yeah, and given where they are at the end of The Empty Grave, like we know that there is a section at the archives for Lockwood and Co. So he has the name recognition and people would see him as an expert. So I think he'd do really well at consulting. Plus he's got opinions.
He has lots of opinions, and I think it's also very easy to transfer becoming a consultant to doing things like lots of public speaking and events, which we know Lockwood loves.
Oh, yeah. So he would thrive.
And then, it's very natural to go from that to being a politician. I just think it all works. That's the arc I see for him.
Absolutely. Okay, so some more fun ideas for careers for Lockwood that I have seen either in fic or on Tumblr. Fencing instructor. Like, that's a thing we know he's really good at. And I could see him doing that. Certainly if you took Lockwood, like if the problem just ends and they all decide to go and just have like normal lives and fly under the radar, that's something he could do that would be fun and engaging. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense too. It's something he clearly loves and that brings him a lot of joy. And he's very good at.
Who put Who put male model on this list?
Oh, that was me and Mairead, because obviously, as we talked about already in the fashion episode, that is Lockwood's other destiny, that he's going to be a male model on the side of being a consultant and then a member of parliament, because it's right there in the text. It's right there in the end of the empty grave when he gets his style profile. He is well on his way already.
Oh, that's right.
This is actually canon,
that's-
people.
That's fair. I think I read a fic where he was modeling for like sword manufacturing, like modeling in fencing whites and modeling like new swords for agents. And I'm like, that would actually be a really good bridge for him to modeling.
Yes, exactly.
And then Mairead left us this one, Swiss Guard, which then I had to go be like, what? Why?
So as the resident Catholic at the moment on the pod, I will say the Swiss Guards you've almost definitely seen photos of them, especially if you've ever or seen them in action if you've ever been to Rome. But they are the like Pope's guards, basically. And
if you've ever been wandering around the Vatican and seen a dude in really puffy, really brightly colored pants who looks like he's cosplaying for the Renaissance, that's a Swiss Guard.
Yes.
That's what I know about them.
That's correct. They actually come from Switzerland. But yeah, they have fancy swords, they have fancy outfits. It is super Catholic, and Mairead is always out here trying to get Lockwood to be super Catholic. So that's his future.
And we're not going to tell her to stop making it happen because it's fun.
No, exactly. So another funny thing that our other podcast members put in this document as we were preparing for it was Nat just said he continues to own the means of production, which I found hilarious. So that is a direct quote from her.
I mean, I think she's trying to say that he's bougie, and he totally is. But there's something a bit strange about, so if Lockwood continues to own the means of production, maybe he takes over, some of these, Fairfax Iron no longer has anyone in charge. But doesn't that basically make him like the next, not Tom Rotwell, but the next Steve Rotwell?
Oof.
The whole like dangers of new money thing that Nat is always throwing around and leveraging his fame for capitalist advancement. That's exactly what the Rotwells did, and to some extent fits. So make that make sense.
I think there's a way, especially in line with some of the other things we've talked about so far as potential careers for him, where Lockwood uses his powers for good in this way. And he really becomes an activist. And, even maybe a little philanthropic moving forward to encourage people to, care about agents and care about everything they went through. So I think there's a possibility here for Lockwood to use his powers for good, even if he continues to be a cog in the capitalist machine that we are all part of.
Not a cog. Someone who runs the machine.
Somebody running the machine.
All right, let's move on to George. George seems like the simplest, the easiest. Like, he's going to go to work at the archives or as a researcher somewhere, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think George, the man is an academic at heart. He's always going to be. And I think that makes a lot of sense for him, or that he becomes a researcher somewhere else. I think that's just where his heart is, and that's where his heart is always going to be.
Yeah, I imagine that a lot of the researchy agent types would have gone on to work at the archives. Like, that would have been the obvious next step for him before the empty grave. But after the events of the empty grave, I almost feel like going to work at the archives is too small of a job for George, the man who, the 18-year-old, 17-year-old boy who solved the problem. So maybe he could go work at the archives while he's like going to school and getting a degree, but also maybe not. Maybe a university just hands him an honorary degree when he's 18, and he can work for UPRA, he can do all the research he wants, he can publish all his research on how the problem spread eventually, right?
Yeah.
Once UPRA is willing to kind of tell the public. And then maybe later he'll just be a guest lecturer and like go spend a year at this university, a year at that university, being visiting professor type. I think he'd have a lot of fun. I think he'd be a star in academics.
Oh, people would love to go to his classes. They would fight over enrolling for them because they would be like the seminars that only take like 8 students, and George would be like very picky about what students he takes. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people think maybe that George skips, going to university himself. But I've always been of the mind that like he is just so intensely curious and there's so many things he wants to
Mm.
learn that I very much see him wanting to continue to like take classes, and he'll be like, I have all this time now. I can go learn, whatever obscure language he wants to and do all of those things. So,
Yeah, as long as he doesn't like have to fulfill requirements.
oh,
Right? As long as he can take whatever classes he wants, he'll be fine.
he wants to control his coursework. Let's be clear.
Yes. All right. Kips. This one is hard for me. The only thing I can see him doing is like becoming a beatnik, sitting in cafes, smoking cigarettes, and drinking a lot of coffee. Right? That's Kips.
Poet, photographer.
Yes. Absolutely. Oh, I'd love it if he discovered a hidden artistic talent.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that for him, even if he does as a hobby, but like I can just imagine him with like a little dark room, like developing his artsy black and white photographs and like making everyone look at them and then being all disgruntled when they just quit paying attention. Ugh.
That would be really fun. I think on a more kind of realistic level, he's more likely to go to work for Yupra, right?
Yeah.
It has been established early on. Barnes is a former agent. Everybody who works at DPRAC is a former agent. And it seems like something Kips, would be really good at. He's good at coordinating. He's good at giving advice. He's good at training young agents. He makes such a good babysitter for Lockwood & Co. He should put those talents to the...
Yes.
I mean, maybe he should just open a daycare.
That's always an option. And there is a great, fic about that out there if anybody would like that. So there's many options for our man.
The world is his oyster. As long as he gets to wear a black turtleneck.
Exactly. That's the most important thing about his future career path. Okay. That brings us to Holly. I think Holly, I have a pretty strong feeling about, similar to Lockwood. I think Holly is very much I can see her going into business management or marketing, especially, if Lockwood becomes a consultant and he's going to need somebody to help him manage things and deal with the details. He doesn't want to, think about an everyday basis. I mean, that's just the perfect job for Holly in so many ways.
Absolutely. She's chief of operations at whatever Lockwood decides to do.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, she would be a great COO at almost any company. That is like a great role for her. Or I think she would also be a great chief marketing officer too. So
yeah, absolutely. I think on a more fun side, party planner. I could see her like getting into it. Maybe she plans Lucy and Lockwood's eventual wedding.
She definitely does.
Oh, I'm really good at that. Yeah, absolutely. She definitely does. But she could decide that she's really good at that and decide to make that a career, like a fun career. Although actually, I don't know. It seems kind of stressful.
It seems terribly stressful, but I am not very good at planning events. So I don't think I'm the right person to ask.
No, but I think Holly would enjoy it.
I think she would too. I think she would like thrive in all the details and all the logistics and all the checklists and the spreadsheets. She would be super into it.
Yeah. One way or another, one thing I want for Holly is for her to eventually find a way to use her powers for good, similar to Lockwood and Lucy. Maybe like going to work for nonprofit. And maybe she does it on the side, or maybe she does it, in retirement, but either working with animals, former agents, maybe the LGBT community, maybe, LGBT agents. There's a lot of opportunities there.
Exactly. Okay, so that's our girl Holly. Now on to Flo.
Do we think Flo has a career?
I mean, I was telling Lizzie before we started recording that to me, Flo's just vibing somewhere.
Vibing somewhere with dirt under her fingernails.
Yeah.
That's Flo.
Exactly. But most of the ideas we have do fit that description. So...
Mm-hmm. And I've stolen these from various fics as well. Antiques dealer. That makes perfect sense. Like she's already going along the riverbanks looking for stuff that people have left behind. And so turning away from like sources towards antiques, it's basically the same job. I've seen somebody suggest gardener. I think that's a really good one. I think she'd get really into plants and like keeping things alive.
Yeah.
Eventually. Like she also is somebody who either needs a lot of therapy or needs to spend a lot of time in a garden. Either of these is going to be
both.
fine for her.
Or both.
Yeah, maybe ideally both. And that gave me the idea of groundskeeper for a cemetery. So picture this. Lockwood starts a nonprofit eventually to revive London's cemeteries, because he comments in The Empty Grave about how sad it is that they don't go to visit the departed anymore. They've let them die again. They've let their memories die. And as the problem starts to get better, which we hope it will after The Empty Grave, there could be this movement to kind of reclaim the cemeteries and to start mourning the dead again. And I could totally see Flo being somebody who's, she's not afraid to go hacking her way through a cemetery and clean it up. And, if she meets a ghost, she's going to deal with it.
She's
no
going to be
problem.
all about it.
Yeah. So I think that would be a great career for her.
I love that idea so much. Such a good one.
And then I have one more character I want to throw at you, Barnes. And I think that having overseen the cleanup of the Fitzgates and the end of the problem and everything, he eventually retires to the south coast of England to tend a garden of succulents and to paint ceramic ducks.
Perfect. No notes, Lizzie. I can't top it.
All right, awesome. So on a related note to post-canon careers, I have a question for you, Meg, which is, who has the biggest mental breakdown post-canon, and why is it Lucy?
Obviously. There are so many reasons, Lizzie. We're going to list a lot of them.
All right. So for everyone else, go with me on this for a minute. I've seen a lot of people say that Lockwood is going to have a big breakdown post-canon when he's no longer in charge of his agency, when he loses his talent and has to shut down. But I don't agree with that, because this is a guy who always has a plan. I think as soon as he loses his talents, as soon as they even start to fade, he'd already be on to the next thing. He is not really a guy who looks back, except occasionally when he breaks into a cemetery to sit, with his family. But otherwise, he's really good at compartmentalizing and just moving forward. And, obviously that can be an issue if those feelings are never dealt with. But he does actually seem to process his grief. Just he does it very privately. And I think now that he and Lucy are much closer and he's getting much better at opening up to her, he might also get better at opening up to the rest of his little found family. I think he's going to be fine. I think he is going to process a lot of those emotions, and I think he's going to be able to move forward in a healthy way with a plan.
This is something where Lizzie and I are just so united. I wish you could all just see me nodding, because Lockwood is, I think I called him already on this episode. He's the man with the plan. He's always got one, and I think he will have one for this situation as well.
Yeah. And I think we already said about George, as long as he has his books, he'll be fine. He's not even going to notice or care when his talent fades.
No. His talent was always just a means to an end, and research was that end.
Yeah, that's his true passion. And then Holly and Kipps have both already had their breakdowns, I think. I think that's how they've ended up at Lockwood & Co. If they hadn't already had a major identity crisis, they'd still be working for Fitz and Rotwell, respectively.
There's a reason we called our Kipps episode King of the Quarter Life Crisis. The man has been through it, and Holly, we also know, in canon, has been through it.
Yeah, absolutely. But Lucy is the person who has dealt with her feelings the least, I feel like, by the time we get to sort of post-canon. So I have two questions. One is, how would Lucy react to losing her talent? But also, how would Lucy react if she never loses her talent? If she gets to 25, 26, 27, and her talent is still there and as strong as ever? I've seen a lot of people kind of theorize that her going to the other side multiple times, and if she goes back to help close down the gates, Marissa never seemed to lose her talent, and Lucy might not either. So these are both kind of situations that I think are fraught for her. So let's start with what happens if she loses her talent. How do you think she would react? She hits kind of 20, 21, and her talent starts to fade.
Well, let's look at how Lucy has responded to past difficult events in her life, at least at what we've seen canon. She's usually in denial, and then she runs away.
Yeah.
And then she has this kind of drawn out kind of meltdown usually about it, but it takes a long time. So I think she's going through that same process. Think of who she became over the Black Winter and how badly she coped with the losses that she experienced, at the very beginning of the books where she lost her team. I think she would struggle a lot and have a real identity crisis, because so much of how she defines herself is her talent. She is starting to get over that a little bit by the end of The Empty Grave, but it's still such a huge part of her.
Yeah, I think it would take her a little while to find herself outside of being an agent. Especially if George and Lockwood are a little bit older than her in the books and in the show. So they're probably going to lose their talents first, and they're already going to be off onto other things. You know, whatever Lockwood's plan is, George is researching or at a university or wherever, and like she's going to be feeling like she's left alone. She's no longer an agent. Lockwood and Co. no longer exists. I think she'd fumble around for a while, you know, and she might throw herself into one thing one year and then throw herself into something else 6 months later. Like she might do that thing that sometimes people do in their early 20s when they've just gotten out of university and they don't really have a firm idea of who they are or what they want to do with their lives. What do you do as an ex-psychic agent? Sorry, I'm bringing back singing. We haven't been singing enough on the pod.
I just don't sing. Everyone else sings. But I enjoyed that. Thank you, Lizzie. To be fair, this is a thing that I think even the people who are most set on our career path or, you know, the most firm in their identity go through in their early 20s. So I think Lucy just might go through like a slightly more extreme version of it than some of the people around her.
I went through it, but I went through it when I was about 30 and realizing that the thing I'd gotten a PhD in wasn't actually the thing I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So that was fun.
I mean, I probably went through this like in my like 23 to 25. So, yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah. You were right on time. I was late. I put it off by going to grad school and like throwing myself into that for many, many years. And I could see Lucy doing that as well, like throwing herself into something for 5-10 years and then being like, wait, this isn't what I want to do with my life.
But sometimes that's just, you know, not to give people life advice, but to give people life advice, sometimes that's just part of the experience.
Absolutely. It's not wasted time. It is just time. And, you know, if it takes you 10 years to figure out what you want to do with your life, that's no worse than it taking 1 year or it taking 30 years.
Yeah, and now I'm just going to get philosophical, but I've seen like the quote where people are like, you know what, the time's going to pass anyway. And it's true. So do what you need to do.
There's actually a bit from the Baz Luhrmann Wear Sunscreen, which I know I'm showing my age here a lot, but he has a line in there that's like, don't worry if you don't know what you want to do with your life yet. Many of the interesting people I know didn't know what they wanted to do at 20. Some of the most interesting people I know still don't know what they want to do at 60.
Yep, it's so true. So true. But speaking of getting older, perhaps we should transition back to our friend Lucy and her getting older and not losing her talent and how that would impact her.
Yeah, I think it would be really strange to go through that experience and to realize that she is as much like Marissa Fitz as Marissa claimed.
Oh, that's dark. I think it also would feel really lonely. You know, she's had her talent, but she's had her talent a part of a community of agents. And then it might kind of feel like she's having a bit of like a little bit of a Peter Pan syndrome, like everyone else is growing up and she's not.
Yeah.
Especially if Lockwood also loses his talent. I think it could make her feel very lonely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that would be a perfect time for her to go to therapy.
Exactly.
I do think that if she then has the choice to step away from her talent and to realize that she needs to define herself beyond being an agent and beyond her talent, it gives her the time and the space to do that in a healthy way, which would be really nice for her.
Yeah.
As opposed to it, you know, the ground suddenly dropping out from under her feet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tough situation for anyone to be in, but especially Lucy.
All right. Let's move on to our next question.
Yeah. So one question that also comes up a lot online is what were the characters up to between books? And we particularly are going to focus on the time between The Creeping Shadow and The Empty Grave because, let's be real, it's our favorite time between books. closely followed by the time gap between The Hollow Boy and The Creeping Shadow. At least I'm speaking for myself.
They're very, you know, it's a nice dichotomy, especially as a fic writer. If you want to write something really angsty, you set it in the Black Winter. If you want to write something fluffy and happy, you set it in this other kind of liminal time, which many of us, particularly those of us on the pod, have dubbed Hot Agent Summer.
Yes, which Mairead hates that name, but I love it and think it's hilarious. The other fun name I think Nat came up with is calling it the Golden Summer, which I also love. But either way, these names are kind of a reference to the fact that after the Black Winter, people must have been so relieved for summer to come.
Yeah, absolutely. That's everybody, but especially Lockwood and Co. because they're now back together as a group. Lucy's back. They've got Kips for some reason. Okay, I guess he's here. Whatever.
Lucy and Holly aren't fighting all the time anymore. Things are looking up, except for, there was maybe a conspiracy they have to uncover.
They are going to be really busy over the summer. But I think that there are still a lot of kind of unresolved issues between Lucy and Lockwood in particular. Because the way that he kind of asks her back and the way that she agrees to come back is very just like, so do you want to come back? Yeah, I do. Like, they do clear up some stuff, but they have a lot still to grapple with.
A lot. All
right, so I think they would go through what I'm going to call the 4 stages of reintegration into the company. Stage 1 is walking on eggshells. I think when Lucy first comes back, there's going to be a lot of just like, everybody's really happy, everyone's elated, everyone's distracted by this revelation about Marissa and Penelope. But I think everybody's going to be really polite to each other and really nice for maybe 2 weeks. And then the tension is going to start to build. Lucy's going to leave her socks on the stairwell one too many times. She's going to get mad or maybe not mad, but she's going to be unhappy that Holly has been in her clothes, folding under her underwear in her drawer again. All the things that kind of were unresolved before, they're still there. They're still going to come up. So I think there'd be this sort of beginnings of bubbling tension that nobody wants to be the one to break.
Yep.
And especially in the field, because Lucy has gotten used to being an independent agent. She's used to calling the shots, right? When Lockwood hires her for the Ealing Cannibal job, she lays down the law. She's like, I am a consultant. I am going to do my own assessment. I am going to make my own decisions about my strategy. You can't tell me what to do, basically. This is going to be a problem if she's back working for him and he's her boss again. So I think that tension starts to boil, it starts to bubble, and then we get to stage 3, bickering. And it starts with the little things. It starts with the stocks on the stairs. It starts with who let the, tomato soup boil over on the stove. Who burnt the toast? Why does it smell like burnt toast? We'll blame it on Kips. It's fine.
The immortal question.
Yeah. So you start by bickering with the little things. But then I think it would grow and we'd get to a stage 4 of like actual, some kind of fight, some kind of blow up argument between Lucy and someone. It might be George. It might be Holly. It might be Lockwood. I think, Lockwood's a little conflict avoidant, but that's the person who's going to be have the most kind of conflict directly with Lucy, especially on the job. And Nat pointed out that they've gotten to a point where they know that they can push each other. They can push each other's boundaries and they're not going to lose each other.
Yeah.
They're a family now. Like, she left, but she came back. She couldn't stay away. And she knows that now. And he knows that now. So all the things they never wanted to mention before are going to kind of like come to the fore. It's all going to boil over and like, well, you never, well, you always, well, it's going to be that. And these are still teenagers. They don't know how to have a really good, productive fight. It's going to be a lot of that sort of language. It's not going to be, I feel statements.
Nope.
It's going to be, you did this, you did that. And I think we'll finally move into stage 5, acceptance, right? We'll get all that tension out. We'll argue it all out. It'll feel good to say. And then we'll come back and be like, I'm sorry, that I said those things. I do still love you. I do still want to be here. And yeah. I think eventually they'll find that equilibrium again. I think it's going to be rough for at least a month or 2.
Yeah, I agree. And what Lizzie did not say through all that is basically she put all of these ideas into a wonderful fic that I'm going to plug on her behalf because she would never do it herself, called The Summer Garden, that you should read on AO3. That is basically the epitome of how I see this time period, and it is a very fun case book fic too, and answers an important question. So go read The Summer Garden. That's my answer to this question. That's how I imagine it all going down.
Thank you, Meg.
But on the note of fic and other fanon ideas, I think the most popular one you see in fic and in fanon about this time period is that like Lucy and Lockwood are having all these nightmares, so they end up like sharing a bed and maybe cuddling, and all these things are happening. And while I love that idea for obvious reasons, as a Locktail shipper,
As someone who's written many of those fics, you mean?
And you've also written many of those fics. Lizzie and I have both written these fics, and they're
Guilty as charged.
so fun to write. I don't think they're actually very likely in canon.
No.
I do think they had lots of late night chats in like the kitchen and the library when they were both up and they like were drinking tea together and like bonding, and their relationship has progressed, but I don't think it has like progressed to the extent that us fic writers like to push them.
Well, then actually, I think Lucy comes right out and says that near the start of The Empty Grave. She says that she and Lockwood have been spending a lot of time together, that they find, the most peace and solace in each other's company. So yeah. I do think that the late night chats, like, that is canon.
Yes. Just maybe not the cuddling, because Lucy makes it sound like when they hug after George is in the hospital that they've never hugged before. So, which could be not true. But I don't think there's a lot of canoodling going on up to this point. So.
No, I agree with you there. All right. Next question. So this is a question that Nat actually asked us. She sent us a voice message on Discord. She said, do you think that in Problem Britain, they might adjust the time to maximize daylight hours? How do you think office hours work? Because in the winter, it's dark at like 3:45 in London, and in the summer, it's light until 11 p.m. So how do you think that might work? And I did a lot of looking at twilight and dusk and dawn and sunset times for London. Obviously, Nat lives there, so she knows this, but I wanted to see what it actually looked like. So right now, today, as we're recording this, the current sunset time in London is 9:22 p.m., but dusk isn't until 10:07 p.m., and that's when it really gets dark. Until then, you're sort of in what's called civil twilight, which is when the sky is still pretty colors, right? It's still light purple or even blue. And right now, dawn is at 4:01 a.m., but sunrise isn't until 4:46. So you've got 45 minutes of light on kind of either end. And you've only got about 6 hours of darkness. It's not a lot.
No, that's like no time at all.
No. And Nat said it doesn't ever get fully dark. And she's right. I looked it up. There is no astronomical darkness for about 2 months in the summer in London. Astronomical darkness, for those who don't know, is when if you pointed a telescope at a piece of dark sky, you'd pick up no photons. Obviously in London, there's a lot of ambient light coming from the city. So it's never going to be fully dark. But the idea still stands that, it never gets fully dark in London in the summer. Which is nice. In the books, Lucy calls it the golden hours, these kind of extended twilight hours where it sounds like people can maybe go out to restaurants, go out to movies. Like they can do stuff in the evenings that they can't do for the rest of the year.
Right. And the whole reason why that London has these incredibly long days in the summer is because it is so far north, which I think as an American speaking, we know a lot of you are Americans listening. Hello. I think it's easy to think that London is much further south than it is.
Oh, yeah. Everybody thinks it's like at the same level as New York. It is not.
It is way further north, and that is why their days are so much longer in the summer and then so much shorter in the winter than those of us in the U.S. are used to.
Yeah, I think I looked it up, and the latitude of London is similar to like Calgary. It's further north than Toronto. It's further north than Vancouver. It's further north than most of the population of Canada.
Right.
But not quite to Alaska. Like, it's not until you get up into like the Scottish Isles do you get into sort of Alaska where it really it feels light all night long.
Yes, I have experienced that. It's wild. But the same thing that's, true about the summer where the days are so long, the opposite is true of the winter.
I looked up winter solstice in London, and sunrise is at 8 a.m., sunset is just before 4 p.m., and then you get, about half an hour of twilight on either side. That's only 8 hours of daylight. And so if you are working an office job, you probably can't be in the office for 8 hours a day because then you're commuting during the twilight hours when it's not that safe. And also, when are you going to do your shopping?
Yeah, I can imagine it would be very difficult. And I think a lot of the things that Nat was asking about, it would make a lot of sense for workers to have different hours in the summer than they do in the winter. It would make sense to structure things very differently as far as like when shops are open and when other public services are available to people, just because it's not safe for people who don't need to be out longer than they have to in the winter.
Yeah, we do know that in London, I think this is in the book somewhere, they talk about like a shopping district that has runnels of water so that there's moving water that the ghosts can't cross, and like iron in the street and burning lavender. I think is it outside like the DPRAC offices or something? They've got the
I
burning
think so.
lavender
Yeah.
to help keep it safe because, obviously essential workers are going to have to be working into those twilight, even into the nighttime hours. So, and especially in London, it seems like they've done a lot of work to try to keep them safe. I think out in the countryside, rather than, one thing Nat had asked was like, do they shift around like a daylight savings, maybe have multiple daylight savings times depending on the time of year? That could get really complicated. It's also tough going like east to west. It's going to be inconsistent. I think it would make more sense for every town to have a local paper where they like publish the curfew times. They publish these different twilight times, and everybody gets really interested in like, what's the difference between dusk and sunset, between dawn and sunrise? Everybody would know kind of like what's safe and what isn't. And then office hours would probably, adjust, post office hours, all of that sort of thing would adjust based on those published times. Like you might have an opening time that is 20 minutes after dawn because that's how long it takes you to get to the shop and open. And then everybody would just know that, all the shops open 20 minutes after dawn or something like that.
I think that makes so much sense because just thinking about how confused people get with multiple time zones in the United States and like some places that do daylight savings times and some places that don't, I think just having like local curfew times makes way more sense than trying to juggle a bunch of different daylight savings times.
Although I think you and I both know that just because it makes sense doesn't mean that's how they do it.
I mean, very little about the way we do daylight savings times in the United States makes sense, but you never know. Okay, this is a great question from Kara the Spellbinder on Tumblr, which I laughed at, which is, does Lucy ever wear a color that's not blue? And Lizzie, what do you say?
I can answer this. Yes, she does.
She does. She definitely does. But the show color scheme really leans into the blue for her. But I especially imagine that Book Lucy, who does not have a wardrobe department at her disposal, wears many colors. In fact, I think we know of a pink and yellow nightie she wears at one point. So there's that, at least for her. And I do have to say, though, I very much enjoy how pronounced the show color scheme is. Like, George, Lockwood, and Lucy really have their colors, and they stick to them, and it creates a really strong, fun visual identity.
Absolutely. Yeah, Book Lucy is obviously wearing hand-me-downs. Like, she's going to secondhand shops, or she's wearing her sister's hand-me-downs. That's just, she's not picky. I don't think it ever says in the books, aside from the yellow and pink nightie, there's not a lot of, like, information about what colors she's wearing. So I think it's kind of up to your imagination.
I think she does wear a blue dress when they go to the Fitz at 50 party.
Maybe that's where it all started. Because doesn't George wear an orange, like, sport coat or something to the Fitz gala?
It's like, I think it's brown. I think that's maybe the
garish
origin of his. Yeah.
Editor's note here to say that I was wrong. The jacket is not orange, neither is it brown. The color is not given. It is simply described as a sport coat. It seems that my confusion arises from this passage. To my surprise, George conjured up a dinner jacket from the bowels of his bedroom. It was rather saggy under the arms and seat, and looked as if it had once belonged to an orangutan. So, I think I took orangutan, and either in my head, because orangutans are orange, I pictured George in an orange coat, or just because it looks like orange, that was what was recorded in my memory. Yeah, brains are weird. Anyway, George does not wear orange in the books as far as I can tell. He does only in the show. Is that his color? So, anyway, back to the pod.
And Lucy mentions wearing black leggings a lot, but that's really we don't get a lot of other colors from her. I think we get more colors describing Holly's appearance than anyone's, which is not surprising.
All right, we have one more question, and this one is a bit of a doozy. So this is from Tumblr user Ethereal Veggie, who asks, I have a question for the kit bag. What do you think each of the gang's musical taste is? And, they gave a couple of opinions. We asked around some, and we got a lot of different ideas. And I think it's tough because it's not exactly clear what musical era we're even in, right? The books are set in the 2010s. I think the first book's like 2014, and it's supposed to be contemporary.
Yes.
But the culture in those books is a lot more 60s, 70s. There's this kind of implication that culture and technology didn't continue to progress in the way that it did in the modern world once the problem really got going. And they took that into the show, which came out in 2023. And then, they updated it to all the dates, like Marissa's birth date and when Fitz was established, all got updated by about 10 years. But then they also updated the culture, so everything looks like it's the 1980s. The fashion, the music that they use in the show, the technology, right? Lucy recording on her cassette tapes, and then that little CRT TV they got in the kitchen. So it's very confusing to me to try to answer this question. Like, we could be talking about a musical era that's anywhere from the 60s to the 2020s.
Yeah. So we've kind of decided to avoid that completely. So you're going to hear us reference artists from like the pre-problem era, and you're also going to hear us reference modern day artists because it's impossible to actually date artists to the correct time. And then if we add in questions about like what music technology was available and would these artists have become popular without the internet or without such and such technological advance, then
would Fleetwood Mac have ever gotten together because half the band is British and half the band is American?
Lizzie's saying this because I had a meltdown about this exact topic via Discord last night as like a diehard lover of Fleetwood Mac. I'm like, what if they never existed? What if rumors never came into the world? And I was devastated about that idea and decided I couldn't live with it. So
I think Fleetwood and the McVeys moved to California in the early 70s before travel restrictions even like became a thing, before the problem got too bad. I think you're fine.
I hope so. But anyway, let's jump into Lockwood, who we think has pretty eclectic musical taste, is I think a general feeling we have about him.
I think so. I think Lockwood would listen to a real mix of things. Like, his parents would have left some stuff in the house. He would definitely want to listen to that. He'd be nostalgic for the music that they listened to. But I think his taste would have been much more influenced actually by Jessica and whatever she was listening to, as a teenager. That's usually when people kind of have their musical awakenings. I imagine she was listening to a lot of music that he would have gotten to hear growing up. But then also he goes off on his own, and when he has his own kind of teenage musical awakening, or whenever he has it, it would probably be whatever, other agents are listening to at the time. What's popular? What's cool? But when is that? I don't know. So it could be anything.
Yeah, I mean, he's the kind of guy who like wants to know what's in with popular culture so he can like sound hip and relevant. But yeah, I think it is, an indisputable fact that Lockwood is into like Frank Sinatra and like Ella Fitzgerald and all of those classics. I do think Lockwood likes Fleetwood Mac. I think he shares my appreciation for their music.
See, and I think because of the kind of era, I think his parents would listen to the Beatles. Like the
I
Beatles
agree.
and Fleetwood Mac, all that really good classic 70s rock, I think he would have around the house. Paul Simon.
Oh, yeah. Big Paul Simon. I 100% see Lockwood as a Beatles guy. I think he's a Paul guy specifically.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm glad we agree on that. But as far as more modern music, I think the other most condom fandom trope about Lockwood's musical taste is that he loves the Smiths. And I can't disagree with that at all.
No, I do think that, especially if we've got kind of a little bit more modern music that we're looking at, indie rock, gothic rock, emo rock, all of those things would really appeal to, well, the emo side of Lockwood. The Cure, I think, is a really good one. I think he'd listen to a lot of The Cure. Mairead said he's one bad day away from wearing the eyeliner for the front man of The Cure.
Yes. And I have to read this quote Mairead gave us, basically, which he was like, specifically said that Show Lockwood is very into the Smiths, and he probably goes around humming "To Die by Your Side Like a Drip." Wow. I mean, which is just perfect. And then she says that Lockwood is perhaps too focused on money and business to listen to music much, and he will later go on a journey of self-discovery and annoy everyone with his new finds, which I think is also valid for him to be, so focused on work. He's not exploring the full range of musical possibilities till he gets a bit older.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Nat had thrown out the Struts and I think Fall Out Boy. I could totally see either of those as well. I think Lockwood just fits kind of any musical genre. I think he'd have really eclectic taste and we kind of listen to anything.
Yeah, I think he'd be kind of up for whatever. He'd have very eclectic mixtapes and then playlists, and that he would really enjoy putting together and curating.
At some point, when he's less busy.
When he's less busy, yeah. This is how he learns to eventually unwind. He makes Lucy elaborate mixtapes, at least in my mind and in my fix several times.
All right, so speaking of Lucy, I think she's a bit edgier than Lockwood, especially Show Lucy. We know some of Show Lucy's musical taste. She's got that Bauhaus poster, a lot of that punk rock, both in her outfits and I think in her in her manner, right? She needs music that she can stomp around in big stompy boots to. A lot of punk, alt rock, indie rock, kind of whatever you want from whatever era. So Bauhaus, Arctic Monkeys, Joan Jett, if we're going kind of punk. And then I think if you go a little more modern, I think she'd be really into more girl power anthems. Maybe Cyndi Lauper, The Cranberries, Garbage, Alanis Morissette. Lots of shouty, angry girl music. Certainly during the Black Winter, she's listening to that.
Yeah, Lucy is 100% listening to a lot of Alanis Morissette during the Black Winter and yelling.
So it's funny. I've been going into Spotify and putting a lot of these bands in to listen to because 90% of the bands that Mairead threw out I had never heard of. But I was also putting in some of these to listen to for Lucy. And Spotify gave me this playlist titled 90s Whimsy Gothic, which I think feels right.
100%. That's my Lucy vibe for sure. And if we're going to skew into more modern music, I don't really think Lucy is that much of a pop girl. But if Lucy is a pop girl, I think she's an Olivia Rodrigo girl. And she both loves the some of her shouty, more punk kind of stuff. And also loves, but is less maybe open about how much she loves the more emotional songs too. So, and I think, Holly could get her to listen to some angry Taylor Swift or I love Maisie Peters, and so does Nat, and we both see a lot of Lucy in her music. So
that makes sense. All right, George. George, I actually feel is the most difficult, even though Mairead said she thought he was the easiest. And I think it's just because he would be really anti-mainstream. He might be into punk or hip hop or metal or just blues. I don't know. Could be anything as long as it's not mainstream.
Blues. Definitely the blues. That was not in our notes, but I see that with George.
Yeah. Nat said hip hop, but only the good stuff. And then I love what Mairead said. She said, I think George would be incredibly autistic about music. He would be able to recite obscure bands' discographies. He would know every EP, every B-side. However, his taste would be freaking awful. All Harsh Noise Walls and Captain Beefheart. I had to look up who that is. They're kind of a weird, bluesy, punky something from America from the 70s and 80s. She says she thinks he loves the heat. This heat, not the heat, this heat. I got that wrong when I first put it into Spotify and it was very confusing. And the only bands he and Lucy agree on are Mekons and Gang of Four, whom, of course, I have never heard of.
Yeah, but I 100% agree that George is very anti-mainstream. He's listening to the most obscure stuff you've never heard of, and he loves it all. He's very intense about his fandoms for the bands that he likes.
I could see him being one of those people who's just devoted to one band. He's devoted to the Mountain Goats and he doesn't listen to anything else.
I love that for him because there are definitely those people who just love the Mountain Goats. But I know those people for other bands as well. But that just seems so on brand for George.
Yeah.
And that brings us to Holly, who, I think we're all in agreement. Holly's a pop girl. At her core. She likes, the classics. She loves ABBA. She loves Madonna. She likes the more modern classics like Lady Gaga and Taylor. And, if Lucy is the Olivia Rodrigo fan, Holly is the Sabrina Carpenter fan. Because I think that very much fits both of their personalities. And I also think Holly loves Chappell Roan. Loves her.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just adores everything about it. I personally had the headcanon that I maybe shared on the podcast before, maybe not, that Holly is South Asian. And so I think she would also be very into Bollywood music, if that's the case.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if she is, then definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she likes stuff she can dance to, stuff she can, like, clean the house to.
Yeah, she
Stuff
likes to
can
have a good
walk to,
time.
stuff that's got to have a bop. Yeah.
Yeah,
And very, very girl power also.
always. Always.
Yeah.
And if she wants to listen to like something more like relaxed, or she's like listening to like Boy Genius and like Phoebe Bridgers, that's my personal feelings. So.
Again, aging myself. Enya?
Yes. Enya's a classic, Lizzie. Enya's a classic.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Speaking of classics, Kips.
Kips.
Not because he listens to classics, but because he's old. Although, actually, I could see him listening to classical. That seems like something he might do because he needs something he can be a little snooty about.
Yes, I think Kips wants to have really cool music taste, but it's to his like great shame that he really just likes a lot of popular music. But he wants to be like, oh, I discovered this band before they were cool, and he like
That never flies with George, right? George is always like, "What are you talking about? They've been around for 10 years."
Right, and I know everything about their discography. I think Kips is also a Beatles man, but I think he's a John Lennon instead of a Paul. Perhaps a George. Perhaps a George. We can debate that another time. And I also think he loves Queen and David Bowie, and
Oh, absolutely.
I think those are really his groups.
I can absolutely see that. And then I think at some point somebody does catch him just listening to musical soundtracks. And Holly gets very excited about this, and he is very embarrassed.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, oh, I just so happened to have this on, but really he like loves it.
He does know all the words to Les Miserables.
You know, that's a career we did not discuss for him, but maybe musical theater. Maybe that's his passion.
Ooh, I actually, one time Nat told me stand-up comedy.
Stand-up comedy. I think he could do it. We know nothing about his singing voice. What if he has a beautiful singing voice?
He would make such a good Javert.
It would be, I mean, he's got the drama, he's got the attitude. He could do it. He could do it. So.
That's it. They catch him singing, look down, don't look him in the eye. It'd be great.
He has to shout when he starts occasionally showering on Portland Row. Like they catch him singing in the shower, and they're all like waiting outside, being like, "We had no idea, Kips." And
it starts with Queen, David Bowie, and like that's funny, and they're kind of chuckling. But then he starts singing musicals, and they just lose it.
Somebody write this fic, please. We need it.
Fantastic. All right, I think that's all the time we have for today. Yeah, this has been really fun. It's good to see you again, Meg. It's been ages since you and I have been on an episode together.
I know. This is the problem with the four of us having very different schedules and all mostly living in different time zones. So it's hard to coordinate, but this was wonderful. And
we would love to know what you all think about some of these questions, especially things like the music. Like, what do you think people listen to? Because really, it could be anything. Do you think Lockwood had a successful career in modeling? Does George listen to techno or house? Were Lockwood and Lucy bickering constantly over that summer? Or were they nonstop flirting until the empty grave? Could they actually tell the difference?
No, they could not. Anyway, you can reach out to us on any of our social media accounts, or you can always send us an email at hauntingthenarrativepod@gmail.com and let us know your thoughts. We love hearing from you and chatting.
So from all two of us at Haunting the Narrative, until next time.